What up, fam? It's your favorite cousin, your favorite uncle, your favorite father, your favorite son, your favorite nephew, your best friend's best friend. It's me, Dr. Larry Smith, and welcome to Living For You, the YouTube channel. As we always say, this is a safe space. This is a place where we grow and we learn and we come together and we have a good time, but we also get some information that is very useful, that is very positive, that's very informative for us to live the best life we can live, not tomorrow, not yesterday, but today. So welcome to Living For You. I'm Dr. Larry once again. For those of you who are my loyal, faithful subscribers, family, I love you. Welcome back. Welcome back. Thank you for coming, and thank you for sharing, and thank you for liking the videos. And for those of you who are new, welcome. I'm Dr. Larry Smith. If you want to know more about me, you can go to www.liveforyoucoaching.com. That's www.liveforyoucoaching.com. That is my life coaching business. I am a life and spiritual coach. I am also a historian and / educator. I'm also a realtor / entrepreneur. There's a lot of things that I wear, a lot of titles that I wear. So you can go out there and get a lot of information on me, but you can also go there and get information on life coaching, mental health, spiritual health, physical well-being, and other things for the total person. And if you want to sign up for some classes or maybe even coaching sessions with me directly, all of that is available there for you to do so at your disposal. So once again, that's www.liveforyoucoaching.com. Welcome, family. I hope everybody's doing good. I hope everybody's well and in a nice, safe space, because we're going to have us a real good discussion about some of the things that's been going on in the world of media all around us. And actually, interestingly enough, it's kind of almost like one story trickled into another story that created another story, and what I'm going to talk about, because you know I talk about these crazy things that are going on in the news in this particular video. Well, Megan Markle, you guys have heard of Megan Markle. Megan Markle is the Duchess of Sussex, she married Prince Harry as she married into the royal family. And by royal family, we mean the royal family of England, the English royal family, which is a well-known, well-prominently documented and always in the media for many, 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 many decades, if not centuries. This family has been getting a lot of media coverage. So it's a well-known family for many, many years. And Prince Harry, who is the son of Prince Charles and Princess Diana, who passed away, and I think it was in '97 when she was in that fatal car accident, they've always been under scrutiny. In fact, a lot of people, including Harry and his brother William, actually blamed the media for their mom's death, simply because they just were relentless. And Princess Diana wasn't your typical royal. She was different. She stood out. She marched to her own beat of her own drum, and she was not under the same level of, however, public positioning of the royal family. Well, Megan Markle is the exact same way. Megan Markle was born in the United States, so it makes her an American born here in the United States, I think in California, Los Angeles area, and she married into the royal family, and that automatically made her different. But what also made Megan Markle different is Megan Markle is biracial. Her mom's black and her dad is white, and so she was the first that we know of, even though I've seen things on social media around that said that there was another black or African descendant English royal, but we know from what we gather in history and just what we know so far, Megan Markle is the first African descendant person to be married into the all-white British English royal family. And that has a lot of heavy baggage onto it. And so there was a lot of public media scrutiny from the press about Megan Markle, and it was so intense and so heavy, and the family didn't really have a lot of kind of protections for her and her life. And so in order to have somewhat of a normal life, or at least a more healthier experience, Prince Harry and Megan decided, with them and their child, to move away here to the United States, where they live here in California. And so that received a lot of scrutiny and everything. Well, after all of the hoopla and the noise and the stuff that was going on with that, Megan decides to sit down with Oprah, her and Prince Harry, and tell their side of the story. Because let's see, the royal press, not just the royal press, but the English press is very well known for being brutal and some of the harshest press that we have on this planet. They really take this thing of getting the story and the scandals and the tabloid information out there really hard. So they went ham on Megan. And so Megan decides to sit with Oprah and tell her story. And she's just very open, very transparent about everything that's going on, from things of how she felt as though she had to, fit in. She didn't fit into the royal family and she never quite got it, but she really wanted to get all of the things, from curtsying to the queen and all of this other stuff and this protocol and this public image and persona. And then she also felt like that the royal family didn't have her back in all of the nasty press that she was getting and making up stories in the press, and she wasn't getting protected by the royal family as others in the family had gotten protected. And not to mention, she even mentioned the conversation about race and how there were certain aspects to the media, but also within the royal family, of how they were wondering what color the child was going to be and how dark was the child going to be. And they were treating Megan and talking about Megan in a racialized way, where it had gotten so bad, and I didn't even know this, but I found this out from the interview, that the British Parliament, some 48 of the members of Parliament, rebuked the English press for how they were talking about Megan in a colonial or a racialized way. And the Queen and the royals didn't say anything about it and never made a public statement about it. And so you kind of get the sense that Megan and Harry because of his decision, and Megan just because of who she was, being a woman of African descent, were left out there alone by themselves. And from the interview with Oprah, we find out that she dealt with a lot of mental health. Because it is, here's the thing. When you marry into a family in general, being a different person outsider from that family, in any family, whether it's a royal family, whether it's a rich family, whether it's a local family right down the street, you're bringing in a new person into a new environment, and you're having to try to fit into that environment on both sides, and so it's always a complex thing. But when you don't feel like you're widely received, and then on top of that, you have outside scrutiny from the media and from outsiders who don't know the story, don't know the inside story, and they're feeding into it, it will have an impact on a person. And Megan disclosed she dealt with suicidal thoughts and mental health issues, and she was just really going through things. Not to mention she had a baby and probably was dealing with some type of post-traumatic stress from her birth, postpartum. I couldn't get the word out. But she probably was dealing with all that, coupled on top of all of the other stuff she was dealing with. And so she just told her story. She just told what she was going through. She told her truth based on what she had experienced. And Harry corroborated pretty much everything she said. He didn't want to go into full details about the story about the baby's color, because he said he doesn't want to ever talk about that again. But you can tell it hurt him. You can tell what he felt he was hurt by. Now, I will say they protected the Queen. They protected the elders, the Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth, said they didn't have anything to do with it. They weren't the ones that they were worried about, but there were others down the line and others in the branch, in the family and in the media and in the English country, England, who had certain things to feel about racialized issues and her being a woman of color and all kinds of, and not fitting in and all of this other stuff, just had a vendetta against her. And so we get that. Now, I would say flat out, being a historian, knowing history like I do, English history, global history, I'm not surprised of racism in England. I've said that, not necessarily on this platform, but when I'm educating and I'm talking to my students about it, we know as historians, the two countries most responsible for racism in the Americas are the Spanish and the English, and a bit of the Portuguese. But at the end of the day, we are aware of that, right? So racism, England became, in the late 17th century, the biggest empire, and probably before that, but really we give it definitely by the early to late 17th century, became the most powerful colonializing empire all over the world. And they went to Africa, and they went to Asia, and they came to the Americas, and they went to other parts of the world, and they colonized black and brown and people of color all over the world. So I am not surprised that there is racism in England. And I have English friends who are of color, and I've read and learned, and on social media and other things, friends who are of color in England, and they attest to the racialization and the racism that are in England. So it's not a United States phenomenon alone. I believe that it's a phenomenon anywhere you have European influence there, and there is a European supremacy, aka white supremacy around, you're going to have some form of racism. So that's not the surprising part. But Megan told her story, and it immediately got a backlash from those in the English press. Speaking of those in the English press, one of which was Piers Morgan. Now, if you don't know about Piers Morgan is a very outspoken British broadcaster. And he's known for saying these salacious things and making these claims. I remember when he was here, I think he was on American Idol, and so he kind of took Simon's place for a while and was that brash person. I kind of see him as kind of a British version of Rush Limbaugh / Tucker Carlson / Sean Hannity, kind of combined into this kind of right-wing, white guy, angry white guy thing that they do. Anyway, so the point is, Piers Morgan has some checkered things to say about what he believed Megan's story was to be. And he said he didn't believe a word that came out of her mouth. And that's a quote. "I do not believe a word that came out of her mouth." Now, we find out that he has issues with Megan. They had a relationship at one, not like intimate relationship, but they were like friendly, and she cut him off, and I guess he was bitter by that. But allegedly and apparently, from what I've seen on social media and what I've seen on the news, is he's been going in and in and in at any chance he get on Megan Markle. And in many ways, it was becoming almost as though he was targeting her because of her race. So, and I didn't want to believe that at first, but then I saw other Piers Morgan's things in which he seemed to be very dismissive of the race conversation. And he also seems to be very dismissive of people of color and women in general, but especially women of color that are on the show with him. And I seen that, and I was like, yeah, this guy has an issue with women, but he also has an issue especially with women of color. I can see that. So there was definitely a tint of racism or racialized belief or bias or whatever the heck you want to call it, as it relates to how he was treating Megan Markle in the press, and just relentless and not wanting to believe her. So when she says she's dealing with mental health, she just lies. You just can just call her a lie in saying what she's dealing with in her experience. One thing I have learned as a life coach, one thing I have learned as a person and just dealing with different people with different emotions, you can not believe what someone is saying, but you don't have a right to tell the validity of how they feel. You don't have a right to determine whether or not how they feel is accurate or not, because only they know how something internally felt to them. And so what she did with Oprah is Megan Markle told how she felt, and how the conversations her and her husband had, and he corroborated how she felt. So there's validity in how she felt, but Piers Morgan, for whatever reason, did not want to agree to that. So much so when he was called out by a black broadcaster on air of Good Morning London, I think, or Good Morning England, something like that, he literally walked off and quit the job because he did not want to be confronted about his views. Now, he was like, well, it's the First Amendment. I actually saw another interview where he kind of gave just a sporadic interview, and where he was like, it's the First Amendment. Well, he didn't say the First Amendment, that's the United States, but he said freedom of speech. I am a believer of the freedom of speech, and I'm going to have my freedom of speech, and I believe what I feel. And he's even posted tweets that say, I've had time to think about it, and I still believe the way I feel. So he's not backing down. He believes what he believes. But for a lot of black and brown people in England, and black and brown people across the pond here in the United States, we're seeing this as, okay, this is coming across in like a racist way, especially how you've been dealing with her and how you've dealt with other people. So what is the issue here? What is the microaggression that you got going on here? And for those of you who don't know what a microaggression is, I'll throw a definition of it up here so that you guys can see what when we say microaggression, what we mean when we say microaggression. Nevertheless, there are some serious microaggressions that Piers have, and that a lot of white people, Europeanized people, non-people of color have. So segue from that story of Piers Morgan not believing Megan Markle and lashing out and walking out and acting a fool because of how he felt and wanting to express his freedom of speech, then you get Sharon Osbourne, the wife of Ozzy Osbourne, who's one of the co-hosts of The Talk, which is a talk show here where you got multiple women give their opinions. And she starts to go to the defense of her good friend, they're both English, Piers Morgan. And she starts to try to defend, I don't think he's racist. He's not a racist. Why is it always that when somebody has an opinion, can't he just have an opinion and not be considered racist? And Cheryl Underwood jumped to explain to her that your opinion is not racist, but it's just certain things that are suspect. It's certain things that you've been saying and that he's been doing repetitively. And she even noted that when he was on their show, she pointed that out to him, to his face, that these things can be perceived as this way because that's how it feels. And it's just so coincidental. So Sharon Osbourne wasn't hearing it. She was like, that's my friend, and I do not believe he is a racist. And then somehow in the midst of that conversation, it shifted to her feeling victimized. She went straight to the victimization play. That, oh, see, now that I'm defending him, who people perceive to be racist, people are going to think I'm a racist, and I have not in all my years of life had to defend myself against being a racist because I'm not a racist. And she started lashing out at Cheryl Underwood, who she thought was going to cry, and she even said, you're not going to cry. You don't get to cry. I deserve to cry because I'm being attacked. I'm pretty much being attacked. And all of this interesting storyline, so much so that it got so heated that the talk had to go on hiatus while they investigate what's going on there and all the situation around this conversation and probably some background stuff that we don't have no privy to. But they went on a hiatus to deal with it. Now, here's the thing. What Cheryl Osbourne did was so typical of, instead of trying to understand the other person's perspective, or instead of trying to understand what people are saying, especially as it relates to race, and especially from people of color, she went on the defense that, okay, now you're calling me a racist. No one called you a racist, but you're taking on that, and then you start playing out as though someone's attacking you. And I find that to be a very dangerous rhetoric, because it's that same rhetoric of being an aggressor, and then when you're taking, when people go back with you, then all of a sudden you become the victim, and then you start creating this narrative that have killed a lot of black men and black people in general back in the day, with this victim mentality when initially you were the aggressor. That has happened. And so it's just kind of a weird scenario. Now, here's my take on all of this. Like I said before, I am not surprised that Megan would have experienced racism in England and with the English people. It's just kind of like, okay, duh. But what's shocking, and not necessarily shocking, but what's also commonplace too, is when it's brought out, it seems like no one wants to take the responsibility of trying to understand what it's like to be a person of color in the situation when you're dominated by European influence and European population. To try to understand that takes a level of empathy that a lot of people aren't willing to just go through with. Now, mind you, I know this personally. I've been on social media, and I've gotten into social media conversations and even social media spats, it seems to me, at this point, trying to explain microaggression, trying to explain racism, trying to explain prejudice, and trying to explain institutionalized stuff and the whole gambit around the racism conversation. And it always turns out to where it's just exhausting and tired. So much so to where I made the declaration, even on social media and to myself personally and to people in my life, is that I'm just not going to try to explain racism to white people anymore because it's exhausting and they don't get it. And I believe that some of it is a willful choice of ignorance not to get it. So I don't want to even waste or exhaust my energy trying to do it again, because it is such a common thing. So what you see in Piers Morgan is a bunch of microaggression, and then you see Sharon Osbourne gets into defense in this kind of, I don't understand. Help me understand. You don't want to understand if you automatically goes to the defense of I'm being attacked. If you want to understand, then you're open up. You're vulnerable to someone explaining, from my perspective, this is how I feel. Even in that conversation, Cheryl Underwood was like, I'm not attacking you. I'm not calling you a racist. I know you personally, so I know that that's not you. Cheryl Osbourne didn't want to hear it. And in order for you to get through to somebody, or to allow somebody to get through to you, you have to hear them. And I don't just mean listen, because a lot of us passively listen. We listen, but we hear bits and pieces and we don't get the gist of it. When we say you have to hear them, you have to take how you would imagine their heart feels in this situation, their soul, their spirit, their ego, their mind feels in this situation, and try your best to put it in you to help you understand it from their perspective and try to feel the emotions that they're feeling from that. That's what empathy means. It's more than just sympathy, feeling sorry. It's taking it on as your own feelings and emotions and thinking and listening from that perspective. And like I said before, I've had these discussions with white people. I've had these discussions, and I've tried to explain it in the most logical, sophisticated way, and it always goes to, you're a black person, you're playing the victim, there's a race card that you're using just because you're black. I never got the understanding of what a race card is, because simply it doesn't give me privilege to anything to say that I'm being racist, I'm being targeted in a racist way. Because 90% of the time, probably even more, the person who is being racist towards me isn't going to face any consequences for their actions. And so at the end of the day, me acknowledging the racism doesn't do anything for me. And it really, most of the time, doesn't do anything against them. So it's really just me acknowledging and just expressing what I am experiencing and how I am feeling it and the way it is coming to me. But generally, like I said, it gets shut down and here you go again, expressing race again. And that's why I say it's a very difficult conversation for African Americans to talk about progress and expect it to be somewhere outside of our community. I'm very much a person who believes in community enrichment first, because I believe that trying to wait on somebody else to come and save us, who are not in our community, who doesn't understand our experiences, who don't know what it feels like to be in our shoes, is going to be a futile effort of the same ebbs and flows, ups and downs, pendulum swings that we've been experiencing for the last 150 plus years. It's just, we can be freed from slavery, but we'll never be free from what racism has created in this country until someone's ancestors who created racism ends it, the majority. And that's just not seeming to happen. So it is what it is. But, it's across the sphere of the European influence. So I feel bad for Megan that she's getting backlash from expressing her emotions. But it's not like it's surprising to me. I think Piers Morgan is just going to be Piers Morgan. He's in that same vein of the Donald Trumps and of the Tucker Carlsons and those people whose opinion to them matters more than reality, or their opinion to them matters more than people's feelings, and they're willing to hurt people's feelings as long as they get a chance to express that opinion. And he even said in the interview he's not done. He'll be back on another show, so if he's not canceled, he's coming back, because he knows that there will be an audience always willing to listen to his trash. Sharon Osbourne, there might be hope for her, but she got to stop playing that victim thing. And somebody needs to pull her to the side, preferably somebody who is a confidant of many years to her, who's a person of color, and let her know that what you're doing is you're villainizing us. And in this situation, we shouldn't be villainized. We should be understood. That's the crazy news that's going on around the Megan Markle and all of this royal family. It's been talked about for a lot, and people are talking about it all over social media. It's on the news, but you can understand racism and race relations and all those things is a very hot topic. It's always been a hot topic. It may always be a hot topic, as long as we don't talk about it in any realistic terms. I want you to center yourself. I want you to not allow all of that to change who you are on the inside. Breathe in, breathe out. Acknowledge your breath all the time and be at peace, and don't let all of this crazy news get to you. And as I always say, I love you, and I'll see you in the next video.